My thought, Logos, it is a melancholic planet in mythology. It alone produces nothing, creates nothing. It simply connects things together. Mercury embodies the aptitude for logic and reasoning, for logical processes, which is under the responsibility of the left hemisphere of the brain. The essence of Mercury's nature is to make connections. This mainly applies to human language, which uses a system of symbols, which allows us to recognize the objects and notions that lie behind the symbols. It's my way of thinking, how I organize my thoughts and what I emphasize in my speech, for example, emotions or facts. What do I want to express with words? Tools, a maid, workers, sellers, speculation, a pen, a computer, work. A screwdriver goes under Mercury because it's a useful tool, and a knife goes under Mars because its function is to cut, but it can also go under Mercury. A hunting or a self-defense knife is definitely a Mars theme. But if I cut the bread for the guest with a knife, here we are talking about the symbol of Mercury, the role of a mediator, of a multiplier, the intermediary, organizing everything, all the details into a system. Mercury is dry, faceless, without emotional interest. It simply relates factors to each other. In addition, it does it when it suits him. This is the deep archetype of Mercury. It is a multiplier of what exists in large quantities, a mediator who pursues his objectives. The archetype of Mercury is revealed best in mythology, as he cheated and was a mediator, a messenger of the gods. He was one of the few who could enter any realm. Even Zeus could not enter the realm of the dead. Who does have formulaic thinking? People living on the lunar pole. Mercury and its parameters in the birth chart have nothing to do with it. These kinds of people are victims of society's patterns and stereotypes. The official religious institution is very hostile towards astrology. We can often hear nowadays, your astrology comes from the devil. Why this prejudice? Same in politics. All Americans are bad. All Americans are enemies of Russians. These kinds of beliefs originate from what we hear in the news, in newspapers, without applying our own filter. The lunar consciousness plus the Mercurian pole of thought give a very dangerous explosive mixture. If the sun and the moon do not play determining roles in our motivation, then the internet will turn into a platform for free information, which will not always benefit us. In the modern world of education, we use interactive blackboards, tablets, iPads, and all kinds of gadgets, but despite of this, the perception of information and thinking remains stereotypical. This is a major problem of modernity. Therefore, the academic grading system is a bad strategy. It does not teach to think. As a consequence, children study to receive good grades. A person living on the Jupiterian pole, intellectually speaking, is not of interest to society because it is not gainful for society, which prefers that its members know the details and that's it, so that it can use people as tools, manipulating them. Society thus fulfills one of its functions of carrying out natural selection. No one wonders why astrology doesn't please the official institute of religion. People have heard the information and are passing it on to others. The astrological symbol of Mercury is the crescent of the soul linked to the cross of matter through the ring of spirit. Spirit unites soul and matter through Mercury. Its concepts becoming one with the individual manifest on the physical plane. At the beginning of his development, man is almost no different from an animal. His capacity for logical and rational reasoning is completely lacking. He does a little reading, but he is not really interested in gathering information. He is not interested in anything in particular and is simply concerned with questions of survival. His interests are limited: food, comfortable housing, sex. What helps him survive? 3 or 4 ideas that regulate his behavior. The opinions of his family members may be important to him. He has stereotypical thoughts for every occasion. a set of ready-made solutions and a set of answers to questions that might be asked of him. He therefore does not need to think, nor is he inclined to do so. In his social environment, a whole set of these ready-made ideas and clichés are generated, and the person depends on the opinion of others because she feels that her behavior should not go beyond the demands of society. She is part of a crowd that does not cross limits or boundaries or break norms. The influence of propaganda on her is enormous. The person's heavy and clumsy ideas about life do not allow her to understand everything that goes beyond her strict vital needs, and her speech is not developed. She may feel irritated when someone speaks to her in a way that is unfamiliar to her. The person has a limited vocabulary, but can show strong bursts of energy in the response she gives to her interlocutor. The moon represents the remains and presence of animal consciousness within us, and when we feel irritation, we must ask ourselves, under the influence of which instinct am I presently? Which of my three instincts is not satisfied? At this stage of evolution, man is an instinctive animal who is not interested in information. We share with the animal world the ability to feel thanks to the moon. At the intermediate level of his evolution, man always has an erroneous perception of the world, which irritates and annoys him. Man then learns to build his own mental models, according to which he can orient his life. He begins to think differently, without being totally influenced by his environment, and draws his own conclusions, challenges propaganda, and has his own interpretation of social problems and people. He is less and less dependent on preconceived ideas, and is distinguished by his disagreements. He is doing a lot of reflecting and has an interest in politics and social problems, but is still far from having an interest in himself. He shows all the signs of independent thinking. Others say when talking about him that he is a strong personality and interesting individual. Let us not forget that Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. It all starts with the ability to evaluate oneself, which is part of self-awareness and an impetus for spiritual development. The path of our evolution begins with a conscious assessment of the world, with its logical and rational understanding, as well as with understanding ourselves and our actions. But this is still about intellectual, rational thought, while spiritual thinking manifests itself in the ability to compare oneself to others and in the aptitude for self-criticism. Man must turn to himself and look at himself in the true light, without illusions. This is the moment when the construction of the mental body begins. The consciousness of the mental body is a tremendous force that makes man the king of nature. Thanks to it, he has the ability to control not only his own psyche, but also that of others, and he can influence the world around him with mental energy, materializing circumstances. Next, information studies, documents, a pen, paper, birds, a parrot, a monkey, a snake ball, a chameleon. Also a jester, humor, simplicity, jokes. Keep in mind that joy and exaltation are the symbols of the sun. Why did kings have court jesters? The latter were making fun of the faults of the sovereign, telling him the truth about the flaws of his plans. According to the Egyptian mystery, the god Thoth was accompanied by a monkey. The animal monkey looks a lot like a human being, doesn't it? It makes faces copying humans. The monkey's attitude made it possible to test the resistance of the king's faults, who could then do the work on the errors. The Channels of Mercury. There are two of them since Mercury governs two signs. The first channel, the planet Mercury, my functions of thinking, reflecting, copying, learning, writing, taking care of the routine, calculating, refining, clarifying. The sign of Gemini and its qualities. How is it? Logical, intelligent, curious, useful, sociable, pedagogic, superficial, light, scattered, copied. House 3. The situations of training, documents, communication, meetings, travel, trips, tourism, neighbors, and neighborhood. The Sun in Gemini. I am consciously curious and logical. I am aware of my need for communication, information, contacts, and travel. Venus in Gemini in the sense of money. I expect money to bring me practical benefits. My attitude towards money is easy. Money is just a tool to get something. I earn and spend money easily and quickly. Will I waste money or not? This will depend on the aspects of Venus and on the aspects of its dispositor. Venus in Gemini in conjunction with Saturn. You will not be a spender. You will see money as something practical and useful. You will save it. Mercury in a house of the birth chart. Where, in what circumstances does the chart require satisfaction of the functions of communicating or copying? Where should I speculate, be cunning, look for my own profit? The house of Mercury will correspond to the area of life where the native will learn to think correctly, to evaluate reality, to evaluate himself. Mercury in house 2. I have to be cunning in finance. Mercury in house 4. With parents and family members. Mercury in house 12. In the field of esotericism, psychology, with strangers. My routine in particular circumstances. What happens when I engage in Mercurian activities? Mercury in house 8. Stress sets in immediately. A crisis arises. Or I entrust my emails or my papers to another person. I delegate. Mercury in a house. Where can my speech, my ideas work to my advantage? Can benefit me? How do I resolve situations with documents? Mercury in aspects makes the other planet logical, schematic, and detailed. Mars aspects Mercury. My performance at work depends on planning and analyzing in advance. I work better when I do everything in small portions. The process must be divided into small parts, into sub-plans.